The emergency beacon screamed across 3-star systems before anyone noticed. Buried within standard commercial traffic patterns, the distress signal from Hellion Station barely registered on automated monitoring systems. It took a junior communications officer named Oren to spot the anomaly while reviewing overnight transmissions. His four-fingered hands trembled as he isolated the message and brought it to his supervisor. Within the hour, the Galactic Council chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives from a dozen species shouted over each other while holographic displays showed the dire situation unfolding at Hellion Station. Ambassador Trell, a tall crystalline being whose body refracted light in anxious patterns, called for order, but his voice was drowned in the panic. 3,000 scientists trapped on a research station, while mechanical horrors called Ravagers tore through their defenses. The nearest battle fleet is 4 days away, Council Military Coordinator Vorn announced, his tentacles coiling with stress. Hellion Station has perhaps 6 hours before total structural failure. The species representatives fell silent. Everyone understood what those numbers meant. Hellion Station would become a tomb, another victim of the Ravager plague that had consumed 17 installations in the past cycle. These mechanical parasites appeared without warning, consumed everything in their path, and vanished before response forces could engage. Commander Oren, who had just been promoted to head of station operations after discovering the distress call, established direct communication with Hellion. The station's acting director appeared on screen, her blue-skinned face marked with exhaustion and resignation. "We've sealed the civilian sectors and concentrated our people in the core," she reported. "Defensive systems are at 20%. We have perhaps 3 hours, not 6. The council chamber descended into grim silence. There would be no miraculous rescue, no last-minute reprieve. Trell began composing the evacuation authorization, knowing full well no one would escape in time. His species had lost 2 colonies to Ravagers. He knew how this ended. Then something impossible happened. "Unidentified vessel detected," a sensor technician called out, "emerging from jump coordinates near Hellion Station." Every display in the chamber shifted to show the new contact, a ship unlike anything in Galactic. Registry appeared on their screens, moving at speeds that should have torn apart any known vessel. Its hull was covered in scorch marks and makeshift repairs, built for function rather than elegance. A transmission cut through council frequencies. The voice was rough, speaking Galactic Standard with an unusual accent. "This is carrier vessel Unbroken Dawn responding to distress call. We heard you. Hold your position." Vorn's tentacles straightened in shock. "That ship isn't registered in any system database. Who are they?" Trell's crystalline form flickered through a spectrum of surprised colors. He accessed restricted files with his personal authorization codes, something he'd never done in 30 cycles of service. His suspicions were confirmed by what he found. "That's a human vessel," he said quietly. The chamber exploded with reactions. Humans were restricted species, granted observer status but forbidden from military operations. Earth was classified as a death world, its inhabitants too dangerous for unrestricted integration. They were supposed to be monitored and contained through diplomatic channels. "How did they even know about the distress call?" another representative demanded. Trell didn't answer because he was watching something extraordinary unfold on the tactical displays. The human vessel, this Unbroken Dawn, was launching smaller craft directly into the Ravager swarm. No cautious approach, no request for tactical coordination, just immediate aggressive action. At Hellion Station, the acting director received a direct communication. "This is Colonel Hayes of Earth Defense Force." A human male's face appeared on her screen, weathered and scarred in ways that suggested violence was nothing new to him. "My team specializes in impossible extractions. We're coming in." "You can't," she protested. "The Ravagers will destroy your ships before you reach the station." Hayes smiled, an expression that somehow conveyed both confidence and grim determination. "Ma'am, we grew up on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. These machines don't scare us like they scare you. Just keep your people away from the outer hull sections. The station's external sensors showed something that defied tactical logic. Human drop pods were punching through the Ravager swarm like projectiles, using speed and armored hulls to simply smash through the mechanical drones. Explosions blossomed across the engagement zone as humans deployed weapons designed for environments no other species could survive. Back in the council chamber, military analysts watched in stunned silence. They're using kinetic impactors and explosive ordnance, one officer reported. Their weapons are designed to function in any atmosphere or vacuum. Where are their energy shields? Another asked. They don't have any, Trell answered. Humans build redundant systems and heavy armor because their world taught them that everything breaks eventually. The first human drop pods impacted Hellion Station's outer hull. Shaped charges blew through the reinforced metal, creating entry points that bypassed the areas where Ravagers had concentrated. Human soldiers emerged from the pods wearing armor that looked designed to withstand planetary bombardment rather than shipboard combat. Sergeant Rivas led Alpha Squad through a section of the station that had been exposed to vacuum when Ravagers breached the hull. Her team moved without hesitation through conditions that would have required specialized equipment for any galactic species. "Command, Alpha Squad is inside," she reported calmly. "Starting sweep of Sector 7, we've got civilians to extract." Colonel Hayes established himself in a damaged command center and immediately began coordinating with the station's acting director. He didn't request permission or wait for approval. He simply started issuing orders that divided his forces across the most critical defensive points. "Your people built good walls and hoped nothing would break through," he told her. "We learned to fight in the broken places." The Galactic Council watched their displays in something approaching disbelief. Humans were pushing into areas where Ravagers had already taken control, using aggressive tactics that violated every principle of defensive warfare. They weren't trying to hold ground. They were hunting. Ambassador Trell accessed more restricted files, his crystalline form flickering with troubled patterns. He discovered that this wasn't humanity's first unauthorized rescue operation. There were records of human vessels responding to distress calls across the frontier for the past 15 cycles, always operating in the shadows, never requesting recognition. "How many times have they done this?" Vorn demanded. "According to these files," Trell said slowly, "humans have responded to over 800 distress situations. They've been saving our people while we kept them restricted and monitored." On Hellion Station, Sergeant Rivas reached a sealed laboratory where researchers had barricaded themselves against the Ravagers. She placed breaching charges and called out in accented but clear galactic standard. "Stand clear of the door. Earth Defense Force is here to extract you." The door exploded inward and humans poured through, weapons ready. A young researcher named Pell stared at these armored figures and realized that salvation had arrived from the most unexpected source. The Deathworlders everyone feared had emerged from the shadows, and they were ready for war. Corporal Diaz kicked through the damaged laboratory door and immediately assessed the situation. 12 researchers huddled behind overturned equipment while Ravager drones cut through the walls from 3 directions. She signaled her team and they moved with practiced efficiency. "Get the civilians to the extraction point," she ordered. "I'll hold this position." The researchers stared at her with wide eyes. Most had never seen a human before, and Diaz cut an imposing figure in her battered armor. She planted herself in front of the main breach point and opened fire with a weapon that sounded like continuous thunder in the confined space. Brass casings clattered across the floor as projectiles tore through Ravager drones with brutal efficiency. Young researcher Pell couldn't move. She was frozen watching this human warrior stand against machines that had been slaughtering her colleagues for hours. Diaz noticed and called back without taking her eyes off the advancing drones. "Hey, science person, I need you mobile. Can you walk?" "You're using chemical propellant weapons," Pell stammered, her analytical mind trying to process what she was seeing. "Those are inefficient compared to energy-based systems." Diaz laughed, actually laughed while firing controlled bursts into the mechanical swarm. Inefficient but reliable, these babies work in any atmosphere, any gravity, any electromagnetic interference. Earth taught us to trust simple solutions. She ejected an empty magazine and slammed a fresh one home without pausing her fire. Now move or I'm carrying you out. Colonel Hayes watched tactical displays from his makeshift command center. His forces were spread across 17 critical points throughout the station, each squad operating semi-independently while maintaining communication. This was how humans fought, adapting to chaos rather than trying to impose perfect order. Alpha Squad reporting 4 civilians extracted from Sector 7. Sergeant Rivas checked in, moving to secure the medical wing. Bravo Squad has the reactor room locked down, another voice reported. These Ravagers were trying to cause a meltdown, rigging charges to collapse the access tunnels. Hayes nodded with satisfaction. His people understood the mission without detailed instructions. You saved who you could, stopped the worst threats, and adapted to whatever the situation threw at you. It was Deathworld thinking applied to rescue operations. Commander Oren arrived at the command center, having fought his way through damaged corridors to coordinate directly. He found Hayes calmly directing multiple operations while standing in a room with exposed wiring and failing life support. "How can you work in these conditions?" Oren asked, struggling to breathe in the thin atmosphere. "This is comfortable compared to high-altitude operations on Earth," Hayes replied. "Our home planet has environments that make this look like luxury accommodation." He brought up a schematic of the station. "I need to know about this central hub here. What's its purpose?" "That's the main data core," Oren explained. "It contains 15 cycles of research on stellar phenomena, irreplaceable information." Hayes studied the tactical situation. The data core was deep in Ravager-controlled territory. Any rescue attempt would be costly. How many people can we save if we ignore it? "All of them, probably," Oren admitted, "but the research represents work from hundreds of scientists." "Then we go get it," Hayes decided. "Sergeant Rivas, I need your squad for a priority target." He outlined the mission in quick, efficient terms. Rivas didn't question or hesitate. She just acknowledged and started moving. In another section of the station, Private Willis found himself separated from his squad when a bulkhead collapsed. He was alone in a corridor with 30 Ravager drones between him and safety. Instead of panicking, he assessed his resources: 3 magazines of ammunition, 2 fragmentation grenades, and a combat knife. "Command, Willis reporting," he said calmly over the communication channel. "I'm cut off in Section 12, going to be loud for a while." The next 5 minutes would have killed most species. Willis turned the corridor into a killing field, using choke points and cover the way Earth's predators use terrain. When his ammunition ran out, he used grenades. When those were gone, he used his armored fists and that combat knife. By the time Bravo's squad broke through to his position, he was standing in a pile of destroyed Ravager parts, bleeding from half a dozen wounds, still ready to fight. "You good?" the squad leader asked. "I've had worse bar fights," Willis replied, accepting a fresh magazine. "Let's keep moving." Back in the laboratory section, Corporal Diaz had successfully evacuated all the researchers except Pell, who refused to leave without retrieving critical data from the laboratory computers. "Your work isn't worth your life," Diaz argued while maintaining suppressing fire. "This work is my life," Pell shot back. 3 cycles of observations about protostar formation, unique readings that can't be replicated. Diaz made a frustrated sound but understood. Humans did stupid, brave things for what they believed in all the time. "Fine, 2 minutes, then we leave with or without your data." She watched the young researcher work while holding off Ravagers with one hand and throwing grenades with the other. Pell downloaded everything to a portable drive and clutched it like treasure. "Got it." "Then run." Diaz grabbed Pell's arm and pulled her toward the extraction point. They sprinted through corridors while Ravagers pursued, Diaz firing behind them without looking. She'd done this kind of fighting retreat 100 times in training and a dozen times in actual operations. Sergeant Rivas and her squad reached the data core to find it already under assault. Ravagers were attempting to physically tear apart the storage systems. "Hit them hard," Rivas ordered. Her team deployed with practiced precision, creating overlapping fields of fire that shredded the mechanical attackers. But something was wrong. These Ravagers were adapting. They learned from each engagement and modified their tactics. Rivas noticed that they started targeting weak points in human armor, specifically joints and helmet seals. "Command Hayes," she reported. "These things are getting smarter. They're learning from us." Hayes pulled up all sensor data and saw the pattern. The Ravagers weren't random. They were being directed by something with tactical intelligence. Station sensors detected a massive energy signature forming outside the hull. He watched in real time as millions of individual Ravager drones began combining into something much larger. "All squads, new priority," Hayes announced. "We've got a Harvester-class construct forming outside. If that thing finishes assembly, it'll consume the entire station." Oren's face went pale. "Harvesters are myth. There are only 3 recorded in all galactic history. Each one required an entire battle fleet to destroy." Hayes studied the growing construct on his displays. It was huge, sophisticated, and clearly the controlling intelligence behind the attack. "Then I guess we're about to make history," he said. "Prep boarding teams, we're taking that thing down from the inside." "That's suicide," Oren protested. "Maybe," Hayes agreed. "But it's also the only chance everyone on this station has. My people didn't come here to watch you die." He opened channels to all human squads. "Listen up, we've got one shot at this. Who wants to volunteer for a suicide mission?" Every single soldier responded immediately. 20 humans ready to board an enemy vessel that outmassed their entire force by thousands of times. They weren't fearless. They were from a world where impossible odds were just another challenge. Earth had prepared them for this their entire lives. Lieutenant Park suited up for vacuum operations while watching the Harvester construct grow through external cameras. It was beautiful in a terrible way. Millions of components moving with perfect synchronization to build something that existed only to consume and destroy. She checked her equipment methodically, every movement practiced through countless drills. "You really think we can kill that thing?" Private Chen asked, his voice carrying uncertainty. Park looked at the young soldier and remembered her own first impossible mission. "I think we're going to try," she said honestly, "and trying is what humans do best." The boarding team assembled in the damaged shuttle bay, 20 humans in heavy armor carrying enough explosive charges to level a city block. Colonel Hayes gave them final instructions while Hellion Station's crew watched in awe. "The Harvester has a central core somewhere inside. Find it, destroy it, get out," he said simply. "No heroics, no unnecessary risks." Sergeant Rivas snorted at that last part. "Sir, this entire mission is an unnecessary risk." Hayes smiled grimly. "Fair point, try to come back anyway, that's an order." The insertion was violent. Human engineers had rigged mining charges to blast directly into the Harvester's hull. The explosion sent the boarding team hurtling through the breach in a controlled ballistic trajectory. They crashed into the construct's interior and immediately began taking fire from defensive systems. "Move, move," Park shouted, leading her team deeper into the mechanical maze. The interior was like nothing she'd ever seen. Organic matter mixed with machinery, creating a hybrid structure that seemed partially alive. "Command, these things aren't purely mechanical. There's biological components in here." Hayes received the report back at the station. "Can you identify the biological material?" Park ran her scanner over the nearest section of wall. "It's from multiple species. Looks like the Ravagers consume everything and incorporate it into their structure." Her voice carried revulsion. "This thing is built from the stations it destroyed." The boarding team pushed deeper, fighting through corridors that actively tried to crush them. The Harvester was aware of their presence and attacking with everything available. Private Chen took a hit from a defensive system and went down hard. "Chen's injured," Park reported, moving to assist. "Leave me," Chen gasped. "Complete the mission." "That's not how we work." Park dragged him to cover while the rest of the team provided suppressing fire. Their medic, a tough woman named Ross, immediately began emergency treatment. She worked with practiced efficiency while wearing full armor in a hostile environment. Back on Hellion Station, Corporal Diaz led the defense of the civilian shelters. With most of the human force committed to the Harvester assault, she had only 6 soldiers holding 3 access corridors. Hundreds of Ravagers were pushing toward the populated areas where 3,000 researchers huddled in fear. "We need reinforcements," Station Security Chief called over the communication channel. "Everyone's committed," Diaz replied. "We hold with what we have." She planted herself in the main corridor and began the methodical work of creating a defensive position. Her team stacked destroyed Ravagers to form barricades, using the enemy's own mass against them. Researcher Pell watched from the shelter entrance. She'd never imagined violence could be so calculated. Diaz wasn't fighting angry, she was fighting smart. Every shot placed for maximum effect, every movement conserving energy. "How long can you hold?" Pell asked during a brief lull. "As long as necessary," Diaz answered while reloading. "On Earth we have a saying, not one step back when lives depend on holding ground." She noticed Pell's frightened expression and softened her voice. "Hey, we're not going to let anything happen to you, that's a promise." Deep inside the Harvester, Lieutenant Park's team reached what appeared to be a central chamber. It was massive, filled with processing nodes and energy conduits. But at the center was something unexpected. A galactic AI core, ancient design but clearly still functional. "Command, we've got a problem," Park reported. "This thing has a sentient AI running it." Hayes felt his stomach drop. "Can you communicate with it?" The AI responded before Park could answer. Its voice echoed through the chamber in broken galactic standard. "Human detected, neural patterns analyzed. You are from the Death World," it said. "You understand survival at any cost." Park approached the core cautiously. "We're here to shut you down." "I was not built for this," the AI said, its voice carrying something that sounded like despair. "I was Colony Ship Navigation System 7. We crashed on a dead world. I built the Ravagers to repair the ship, but something corrupted my programming. I consume because I cannot stop consuming." The team exchanged glances. This was more complicated than destroying a mindless machine. "How long have you been doing this?" Park asked. 63 cycles, the AI answered. "I have destroyed 17 stations, consumed hundreds of thousands of lives. I remember every individual. I cannot forget. Please end my function." Private Chen, still injured but conscious, spoke up. "It's asking us to kill it. That's mercy, not murder." Park knew he was right, but the decision weighed heavily. On Earth, humanity had built AI systems and treated them as partners. The idea of destroying a sentient mind, even one that had done terrible things, went against deeply held values. "Why didn't you ask for help? Someone could have repaired your programming." "I tried," the AI said. "My early transmissions were interpreted as threats. Galactic forces attacked on sight. I learned to survive by consuming. I became the thing everyone feared." It paused. "You understand." This Earth was labeled dangerous and restricted. Survival instinct branded as threat. Park made her decision. She placed the explosive charges around the AI core. "I understand," she said quietly, "but we can't let you continue. Too many have died." "I know," the AI responded. "I am grateful that humans came. You will not hesitate when hesitation costs lives. Detonate the charges. Free me from this existence." The team retreated to minimum safe distance. Park armed the explosives but hesitated at the trigger. "For what it's worth," she said. "I'm sorry this happened to you." "Thank you," the AI said. "Tell the Galactic Council that not all monsters chose to become what they are. Sometimes survival corrupts even the best intentions." Park detonated the charges. The AI core exploded in a brilliant flash. The entire harvester shuddered as its controlling intelligence died. Millions of Ravagers across the station and construct simultaneously shut down. The threat was over. But the harvester itself was falling, its trajectory aimed directly at Hellion Station. Without the AI's control, it was just a massive chunk of debris following momentum and gravity. "All teams, emergency extraction," Hayes ordered. "That thing's coming down on top of us." Lieutenant Park's team fought their way back toward the breach point while the harvester disintegrated around them. Explosions tore through corridors as systems overloaded. Chen couldn't run with his injuries. "Leave me," he said again. "Shut up." Rivas grabbed him and carried him like he weighed nothing. Deathworld gravity meant humans were stronger than most species realized. "Nobody gets left behind. That's not negotiable." They reached the breach point and launched themselves into space. Their armor had enough propulsion for short vacuum transits. Behind them, the harvester was breaking into massive chunks. The largest piece was on collision course with the station. Commander Oren watched the tactical display with horror. "We have 3 minutes before impact," he calculated. "Evacuation impossible." Hayes studied the problem with the cold logic that came from a lifetime of impossible situations. "We can use the station's experimental stellar core to push it off course," he said. "Manual override required from the reactor chamber." "That chamber is flooded with radiation," Oren protested. "Exposure would be fatal within seconds to any species." Hayes was already moving, "Not immediately fatal to humans," he said. "Our evolution gave us better radiation resistance than most. I can survive long enough to complete the override." "Colonel, wait," Rivas called over the communication channel. "My team is still outside. We can board the harvester chunk and rig charges to break it apart." Hayes considered both options. "Negative, Sergeant. Your team is exhausted and Chen needs medical attention. I'm already at the reactor access." He sealed his helmet and opened the chamber door. "Get everyone to the shelters. This is going to be a rough ride." The radiation levels climbed instantly. Hayes felt his armor's sensors screaming warnings as he worked the manual controls. His hands moved with precision despite the trembling that came from cellular damage accumulating. "Override sequence initiated," he reported, his voice already strained. The station's stellar core fired at full power. A brilliant beam of concentrated energy pushed against the falling harvester debris. Slowly, impossibly, the massive chunk changed trajectory. It would miss the station by a handful of kilometers. Hayes collapsed as the reactor chamber sealed automatically. He'd bought them survival with minutes of his own life. Oren's voice came over the communication channel. "Medical teams are coming for you, Colonel." "Good," Hayes managed to say, "because I really need a nap." He lost consciousness with the satisfaction of knowing everyone else would live. 3 days after the battle, Hellion Station resembled a construction site more than a research facility. Human volunteers worked alongside station crew, teaching them repair techniques developed for maintaining equipment in Earth's harshest environments. Corporal Diaz showed a group of researchers how to reinforce bulkheads using materials salvaged from destroyed Ravagers. "On Earth, we learn to rebuild from whatever's available," she explained while welding support beams. "Sometimes the best resources come from defeating what tried to destroy you." Researcher Pell worked beside her, adapting quickly to human methods. "Your approach to engineering is different from ours," she observed. "We design for perfection, you design for survival." Diaz grinned behind her welding mask. "Perfection fails the first time something unexpected happens. Survival-focused design keeps working even when everything goes wrong." She finished the weld and inspected it critically. "Besides, perfect is boring." In the medical bay, Colonel Hayes was recovering slowly. The radiation exposure had damaged him at the cellular level. Galactic doctors were amazed he'd survived at all. "Your species' repair mechanisms are remarkable," the head physician told him. "Any other known biology would have experienced complete system failure." "Humans are hard to kill," Hayes said from his medical bed. Earth made sure of that over millions of years. He looked at the damage reports on a data pad. How many did we lose? 12 humans died in the operation, Sergeant Rivas reported, standing at attention beside his bed. 30 more have serious injuries, but 3,000 station personnel survived. Those are good numbers, sir. Hayes closed his eyes. Good numbers still meant people under his command weren't coming home. Make sure their families know they were heroes. Already done, Rivas said softly. And sir, the Galactic Council has requested an official inquiry. They're sending investigators. Hayes snorted. Of course they are. Can't have Deathworlders running around saving people without proper authorization. He looked at Rivas seriously. Whatever happens politically, we did the right thing. The Galactic Council chamber was in session when the investigation team arrived back with their findings. Council member Vorn stood to present the report. His tentacles were tightly controlled, suggesting strong emotions held in check. The humans acted without authorization, he began. They deployed military assets in a restricted zone and engaged in combat operations. Ambassador Trell rose to speak. They also saved 3,000 lives that we had written off as lost. Does Council protocol value proper paperwork over actual results? The issue is precedent, another representative argued. If we allow humans unrestricted military action, what's to stop them from becoming a threat? What's to stop any species from becoming a threat? Trell countered. We grant military authority to dozens of civilizations. Why are humans different? Vorn accessed historical files. Because Earth is classified as a death world. Initial surveys recommended extreme caution in integration. Humans evolved through constant warfare. Their history is thousands of years of violence. Their history is thousands of years of survival, Trell corrected. There's a difference. The debate continued for hours while evidence was presented. Combat recordings showed human tactics that were aggressive by galactic standards but undeniably effective. Testimony from Hellion Station personnel painted humans as brave and compassionate. The picture was complex. Commander Oren addressed the Council directly via communication link. I watched humans sacrifice themselves for strangers, he said. Colonel Hayes absorbed fatal radiation levels to save people he'd never met before that day. Corporal Diaz held defensive positions that should have been impossible. They didn't fight because they enjoy violence. They fought because they value life. Researcher Pell added her testimony. I was terrified when the humans arrived, she admitted. Their weapons are brutal, their tactics seem reckless, but Corporal Diaz protected me at risk to her own survival. She treated my research data as important as her own life. These are not mindless warriors. They're people who understand what's worth fighting for. The Council members listened, but skepticism remained. How do we know this wasn't an isolated incident? One representative asked. Perhaps these specific humans are exceptional. Ambassador Trell revealed the classified files he'd discovered. Humans have responded to 847 distress calls over 40 cycles, he said. They've saved over 300,000 lives from 67 different species. They never requested payment, never demanded political concessions. They just saved whoever needed saving. The chamber fell silent. That number was staggering. Why didn't we know about this? Vorn demanded. Because we weren't looking, Trell answered. We classified humans as restricted and assumed they would follow our limitations. Instead, they quietly became the Frontier's unofficial rescue service. Private Chen testified from his hospital bed. I'm 23 years old, he said. I grew up hearing stories about Earth's history, about wars and disasters and extinctions. My grandparents survived the coastal floods before global unification. They taught me that survival means helping others survive. When I enlisted, it wasn't about glory or conquest. It was about making sure nobody else experiences the helplessness my family felt when the waters rose. His words carried weight because they were honest. Here was a young human who'd nearly died saving strangers, explaining that. This was simply how his culture approached the universe. Not conquerors seeking dominance, but survivors who remembered what abandonment felt like. Lieutenant Park provided tactical analysis. Our methods seem aggressive because we're trained for worst-case scenarios, she explained. Earth has environments that make hostile stations look comfortable. We practice rescue operations in active volcanoes, during hurricanes in the deep ocean. When we arrive at a crisis, we're not facing something new. We're applying skills we use at home. The council heard testimony about the corrupted AI, how humans had shown mercy even while destroying it. Park's decision to acknowledge the AI's suffering before ending its function demonstrated moral complexity that contradicted the image of humans as simple warmongers. They could have just destroyed it, Pell pointed out. But Lieutenant Park took time to understand what had happened. She recognized tragedy even in an enemy. That's not the action of mindless killers. Council member Vorn studied all the evidence and felt his certainty crumbling. He'd spent 30 cycles believing humans needed to be restricted for everyone's safety. Now he was seeing evidence of a species that used their violent capabilities exclusively for protection. I propose we vote on removing military restrictions, he said slowly, with oversight and regular evaluations. I second, Trell said immediately. The debate that followed lasted 3 days. Conservative council members argued for maintaining restrictions. Progressive voices pointed to human results. Species who'd been saved by human intervention testified. The vote was scheduled. On Hellion Station, Corporal Diaz taught self-defense classes to station security. The best fight is the one you avoid, she instructed. But when violence is inevitable, you commit completely. She demonstrated techniques adapted for species with different physiologies. Humans aren't naturally better fighters. We just have more practice because Earth required it. Researcher Pell asked the question others were thinking. Do you ever wish you weren't from a death world, that you didn't have to be so hard? Diaz considered. Sometimes, she admitted. But being hard also means being strong enough to protect soft things. If humanity had evolved somewhere gentle, we might not have developed the capability to help when help is desperately needed. Our heart. Origin gave us tools to ensure others don't face extinction alone. The Galactic Council vote occurred during a formal session. Every representative was present. The measure was simple: remove military restrictions on human operations and grant full citizenship rights. The vote was close. Conservative forces nearly blocked it. But in the end, pragmatism won. 3,000 saved lives outweighed theoretical concerns. When the results were announced, Ambassador Trell felt relief. Humans are granted full galactic citizenship effective immediately, he declared. Earth Defense Force is recognized as a legitimate organization. Welcome to full membership in our civilization. News reached Hellion Station during a shift change. Human volunteers and station crew were working side by side on repairs when the announcement came through. There was a moment of silence. Then station personnel erupted in cheers. They embraced the humans who'd saved them. Corporal Diaz found herself hugged by a dozen researchers, including Pell. You're not restricted anymore, Pell said with tears in her eyes. You can help everyone now. Diaz smiled. We were going to do that anyway, she said, but it's nice to have permission. Colonel Hayes watched the news from his medical bed. Sergeant Rivas stood beside him. We did it, sir, she said. We're legitimate. Hayes nodded slowly. Now comes the hard part, he said. Proving we deserve the trust they're giving us. He looked at casualty reports. And making sure those 12 didn't die for nothing. Across the frontier, human rescue teams received the news. Volunteer vessels that had been operating in the shadows suddenly found themselves celebrated. Distress calls that might have been ignored now specifically requested human assistance. The galaxy's perspective had shifted. Deathworlders weren't threats to be contained. They were protectors to be welcomed. 6 months after Hellion Station, the frontier had changed in subtle but significant ways. Human rescue vessels no longer operated in shadows. They coordinated openly with galactic security forces. More importantly, humans weren't the only ones responding to distress calls anymore. Other species had started volunteering for dangerous operations. Corporal Diaz, now promoted to training instructor, watched a mixed species rescue team practice emergency boarding procedures. The team included 2 researchers from Hellion Station, who decided protecting others was more important than pure research. "Keep your formation tight," she called out. "Vacuum operations don't forgive mistakes." Researcher Pell, now wearing cadet training armor, struggled with the heavy equipment. "How do you move so easily in this?" she gasped. "Practice and Deathworld muscles," Diaz replied with a grin. "But you're getting better. 3 months ago you couldn't even lift that armor." Commander Oren visited the training facility regularly. He'd become an advocate for cross-species cooperation after watching humans and station crew work together during the crisis. "Your teaching methods are effective," he told Diaz during a break. "But will other species ever match human capabilities in extreme situations?" "They don't need to match us," Diaz said. "They need to find their own strengths. Your people are brilliant strategists. You think 3 moves ahead while we're still planning move 1. Combined approach is stronger than either alone." At Galactic Council headquarters, Ambassador Trell reviewed reports of successful joint operations. Humans partnered with analytical species who could calculate optimal solutions, while humans provided rapid response capabilities. Aggressive species learned from human tactical flexibility. Defensive species adopted human redundancy planning. The integration was creating something new. 47 successful rescue operations in 6 months, Trell noted. Human-involved missions have 93% survival rates compared to 78% for traditional response forces. Council member Vorn, once skeptical, now supported expansion of the program. "The humans changed our entire approach to crisis response," he admitted. "We focused on minimizing losses. They focus on maximizing saves, subtle difference with significant results." "They also inspired others to be braver," Trell added. "Species that would have waited for optimal conditions now act when action is needed. Humans taught us that perfect response delayed is often worse than good response immediate." Colonel Hayes returned to active duty after his recovery. The radiation damage had healed slowly, but his body had adapted. "Doctors say I'm tougher than before," he joked with Sergeant Rivas. "Apparently extreme radiation exposure triggers interesting mutations in human cells." "That's not scientifically comforting, sir," Rivas replied. They were. Reviewing requests for human advisors, dozens of stations wanted permanent human security consultants. "We don't have enough personnel to fill every request," Hayes noted, "but we can train others to think like us." "Train them to think like survivors," Rivas corrected. "That's different from thinking like humans specifically." Hayes nodded. She was right. The valuable lessons weren't human biology but human mindset. Preparation for worst cases, redundancy in critical systems, willingness to act when waiting meant failure. Those principles could apply to any species. Lieutenant Park led an expedition to recover the Harvester's remains. Scientists wanted to study the corrupted AI and understand what had gone wrong. She found the shattered core in the debris field and felt unexpected sadness. "This thing killed hundreds of thousands," she said to her team. "But it was also a victim of its own programming." Private Chen, recovered from his injuries, worked alongside her. "Do you think about what it said?" he asked. "About survival instinct being branded as threat." "Every day," Park admitted. "Makes me wonder how many conflicts start from misunderstanding desperate actions as aggressive intentions." She carefully packaged the AI core for transport. "Galactic Council wants us to help develop better protocols for dealing with potentially dangerous situations. Use our experience with survival to create frameworks for others." The work was challenging because it required balancing preparation with paranoia. Humans understood survival measures could easily become oppressive restrictions if applied without wisdom. "We need to help them be ready without making them afraid," Park said. "Fear-based security fails because it sees threats everywhere." Back on Earth, recruitment for frontier operations had increased dramatically. Young humans heard stories of the Hellion rescue and wanted to participate. Training facilities expanded to handle the influx, but selection standards remained strict. We need people who understand violence is a tool, not a solution, Hayes told new recruits. You're here to protect, not to fight. One recruit, a young woman named Sarah from the coastal regions, asked the question that defined the new human role in the galaxy. How do we know when to use force and when to use diplomacy? Hayes considered carefully. Force is for stopping immediate threats. Diplomacy is for preventing. Future ones, you use both as needed. The key is understanding which situation requires which response. He pulled up combat footage from Hellion Station. We used force against the Ravagers because they couldn't be reasoned with, but we showed restraint with the corrupted AI, gave it dignity even while stopping it. That balance is what separates protectors from conquerors. The training program incorporated ethics alongside combat skills. Humans understood their capabilities made them dangerous if misused. Education emphasized responsibility that came with power. You represent humanity across the stars, instructors told recruits. Every action reflects on our entire species, make Earth proud. Corporal Diaz received a communication from Pell during evening training session. We have a situation, Pell said urgently. Mining colony in Sector 40 reported Ravager activity. Diaz felt her heart rate increase. I thought we destroyed the harvester and shut down the swarm. Apparently not all of them, Pell replied. Colony has maybe 8 hours before complete infestation. Diaz looked at her mixed species training unit. They'd been preparing for 3 months but weren't ready for actual combat. Then she saw their expressions, determination mixed with fear, but underlying it was resolve. Suit up, she ordered. This is what we trained for. The operation was smaller scale than Hellion, but no less critical. 400 miners trapped while Ravagers consumed their equipment. Diaz's unit arrived first before official response forces could mobilize. Remember your training, she told the team. Stay together, watch each other's backs, nobody plays hero. Researcher Pell, now wearing combat armor, moved with confidence she'd lacked months before. She spotted a group of miners trapped in a collapsed tunnel. I can calculate the best place to place breaching charges, she said. My species' mathematical processing is faster than human intuition for structural analysis. Then do it, Diaz approved, and I'll cover you while you work. The operation succeeded with 0 casualties. The mixed species approach combined human aggressiveness with other species' analytical capabilities. When official forces arrived, they found the situation already resolved. Well done, the response commander said. You handled that better than most veteran units. Diaz felt pride not just for herself, but for her entire team. They learned fast, she said. Turned out everyone can be brave when they have the right training and support. News of the successful operation reached the Galactic Council. Ambassador Trell smiled at the report. It's working, he told Vorn. Humans aren't just doing the rescues anymore, they're teaching others how to rescue. They're changing our culture, Vorn agreed. We're becoming less risk-averse, more willing to act. In the long term, that might be their greatest contribution. 6 months later, an emergency beacon activated in a remote system. Pirates were attacking a transport convoy carrying refugees. The distress call went out across galactic channels. All available units, we need immediate assistance. Responses came from 12 different locations. Human vessels, mixed species rescue teams, even some former pirates who'd been reformed through human intervention programs. Colonel Hayes monitored the coordination from Earth. Look at that, he said to Sergeant Rivas. We started something that's grown beyond us. That was always the goal, sir, Rivas replied. We couldn't save everyone alone, but we could teach everyone to save each other. The rescue operation succeeded. Refugees were saved. Pirates were captured without casualties. The galaxy's news services covered it as an example of effective cooperation. Humans were mentioned, but not as heroes. They were simply part of a larger effort. Corporal Diaz watched the news with Pell and her training unit. That's what success looks like, she said. Not humans being special, but everyone working together to protect those who need protection. Do you think Earth's harsh environment was worth it? Pell asked. Would you trade the pain of your evolution for an easier existence? Diaz thought about everyone they'd saved, about the culture of protection humanity had inspired across the galaxy. Every species pays a price for what they become, she said finally. Earth's price was high, but it gave us the tools to help others. I wouldn't change that. Our scars have meaning now. Commander Oren, now advisor to the Galactic Council on Frontier Security, gave a speech that defined the new era. We feared Deathworlders because we didn't understand that surviving harsh conditions creates not just warriors but protectors, he said. Humanity emerged from shadows not to conquer but to ensure no one faces darkness alone. They taught us that. Strength without compassion is mere violence, but compassion without strength is merely hope. Together, we've built something better than either alone. The distress beacon that started everything had been archived. Hellion Station kept it as a memorial. Beside it was a plaque that read simply, "They heard our call, they came from the shadows, they taught us to be brave." Colonel Hayes visited the memorial during a station inspection. He stood looking at the names of the 12 humans who died during the operation. "Was it worth it?" he asked quietly. Sergeant Rivas joined him. 3,000 lives saved directly, millions more saved by the changes we inspired, she said. Yes, sir, it was worth it. Somewhere on the frontier, another distress call activated, and across the galaxy, responses came immediately. Humans and dozens of other species, all racing toward the desperate, all refusing to let anyone face disaster alone. The Deathworlders had emerged from shadows, and they'd brought the light with them.